Welcome, Windy City Nation, to the first edition of the Windy City Hoops podcast. I'm your host, Joe Kessenich. So as a little intro to the pod, we are your go-to source for everything Windy City Bulls. Bulls get their 2018-2019 season started this Friday night, November 2nd, at Sears Center Arena in Hoffman Estates against the Lakeland Magic. Grab your tickets today at windycitybulls.com/tickets. We've got an all-star team together on the pod today. What's your appetite for opening night of the Windy City Bulls season? Julio Rausseo and Chris Rouse will be on the TV call for the Bulls this year, simulcast on NBC Sports Chicago and Facebook Live for select games. So check your listings on that, as well as all-time Chicago broadcasters Jonathan Hood and Andy Masur will be on the radio call for Windy City this year. We all got together for a little bit of a roundtable on what to expect from the Bulls this year. But first, Jay Hood and Andy were able to catch up with the man at the helm of your Windy City Bulls, head coach Charlie Henry.
Pleased to be joined by the head coach for the Windy City Bulls, Charlie Henry. Thanks for being with us, Coach.
Appreciate you guys having me.
Tell us about what's going through your mind. We're so close to the season. What stands out most about the opening bell on Friday?
A lot of excitement. I've been going here since Monday. It's such a quick deal. You know, you draft Saturday, you travel them Sunday, and then you start Monday. So it really comes fast. But we've had a good first week. Really getting after it. Obviously trying to put a system in a very short time. You know, we'll already scrimmage on Tuesday against Wisconsin to give us one dry run before the real thing. But I like our group. We got a good group of guys, athletic. I think we multi-positional, got some switchable defenders. So I'm really excited about it.
I'm curious now in your second year, what you learned in year number one, if there's things you want to change or if there's things you want to continue to do.
You know, you learn so much. It was my first year being a head coach. It was also my first year in the G League. So those two things, obviously, you know, as first-time head coach, there's just experiences that you're experiencing for the first time. How to handle a tough loss, things of that nature. And then also I had it where it was my first year being around the G League. So learning the league and the ins and outs, because it's very different than college or the NBA. It's kind of a unique, separate entity. So the flexibility of the rosters, stuff like that. Learned a ton. You know, we were ninth in defense last year, but it took us a while to get there. We came out slow out the gates. We were 13th in offense, really bolstered, you know, predicated on our two-way guys, you know, Ryan Archidakno and Antonio Blakeney. So, you know, our goal is we want to be a balanced team. We want to compete at both ends. You know, for us, it means, you know, getting in the top 10 to where we're, you know, our defense is there every night, and then we're a team that plays efficient offensively. And, you know, we really got to close games better. You know, we let some ones get away, obviously, in the last minute. Situational basketball has been a huge emphasis in training camp. We got to handle those situations better.
Coach Henry, there's always this fine line between allowing players to naturally do what they do best and being able to coach them. In college and pros is always a different thing. What do you think is the difference in that, allowing players to naturally do what they do versus having a harness on them on some things?
For sure. It's definitely a tough dynamic. It's one that's got to be managed, and obviously, you know, as I said, with offense, defense balance, there's a balance to it. We really want guys playing to their strengths. You know, we want guys doing what they're good at. You know, the dynamic as a coach is, you know, sometimes you got to, you know, tell a guy that we feel you're better doing this. And, you know, role definition is our job as coaches, and then good teams, players accept their roles. So I want guys playing to their strengths. But, you know, with that, as I talked about the schedule and the immediacy of the schedule, you're trying to put in a system very fast. So in the system, there's just got to be some rules and absolutes that everyone follows. But we feel like at both ends, our guys, you know, our system gives guys an opportunity to play to their strengths.
Coaches are very regimented and they like to do things a certain way. And with the dynamic of this league, your job is obviously to get guys ready for the next level. That does cut into your prep and what you like to do. How tough was that to kind of adjust to with, hey, I want to play this way, but now I lose this guy and I got to play this way?
Yeah, it's interesting. I used to always joke about it. Last year, you know, when you had Arch, Blake, and Jarrell, you felt like you had the full playbook, and then any if anything was missing, it was like, we don't have Blake. So, a third of our playbook's gone, maybe even a little more for Blake. But, and then Jarrell, that elite catch and shoot guy, and then Arch is kind of the quarterback, and, he was like an extension of obviously the coaching staff on the floor. So it's interesting. You got to adapt quickly, and you got to have, guys got to be ready for when the number gets called.
Here's something that you haven't been asked before.
Yep.
How about this? Andy and I know very well that in Major League Baseball, in the minor league system, especially the Twins and other teams, if there's always the Orioles, there's always a book where the minor league system has to be able to mirror what the major league system does. Is that the case in the G League, or is that the case with your team where there is a Hoiberg page or two in your offensive playbook that if they get called up, they'll be ready for it because you're running it here?
Definitely. I'd say it's 80-20. It's 80. You want continuity, the 80%. So it's very, very similar. And with that said, the 20% is kind of what I said is where you're trying to play to guys' strengths a little bit. So we may, the fact that we don't have, Lowry Markkanen, what we do with our 4 might be a slight variation from what the Bulls do, and that's that 80-20. They want it to be, really close, but there is that, 1 out of 5 where if there's an opportunity to play to guys' strength, they allow you to do that. And they also don't mind us trying stuff as well. So Fred and Jim are great about that, have an idea or whatnot. Hey, maybe you guys try it, see if you like it, let us know. So they're great staff, great guys, and easy to work with and work for.
With the rigors of your schedule and with the rigors of their schedule, the Bulls schedule, how often are you in communication with them, and how much information are you sharing on a daily basis?
I would say, every few days, check in via text, phone call. It's really pretty good communication. I mean, we're talking a few times a week. They're checking on our two ways, seeing how things are going down here, and obviously we're doing the same. We're, now that we've went our separate ways, we're watching the games on TV and all that. So
we talked to Tyler Eulis earlier, and here's a guy here who's got the city on his shoulders. It's actually on his shoulders and on his bicep too. He's got little socks. He's got the city. So he loves the game and loves that he's doing it in his city. What can you tell us about what kind of player he is and personality he is for you?
He's a very talented player. He really makes plays for himself and for his teammates. He's a high IQ player. Obviously, I think it helps him having been in the NBA the last 2 years. He's pretty comfortable with what we want to do, how we want to play. So he's a very talented player, obviously at a position where you like to have a very talented player.
Sure.
So we're really excited. We think he's going to bolster his attack. Arch, you don't like to compare guys, but I think you saw Arch, once he got here, what he did to his scoring average, what he did to his assist. I think you're going to see some really high-level play from Tyler Eulis.
And talking to some of the players, it's kind of amazing to me knowing that they're all kind of in the same boat. They all have that same goal. They want to get to the NBA. And none of them have answered the question, do you feel like you need to stand out amongst yourself, or do you need to stand out as a teammate? And they've all answered in the latter, stand out as a teammate. Are you impressed by that, with the fact that they're here obviously trying to learn and try to get to the next level, but I would assume it's only natural to want to try to make yourself stand out.
Yeah, it makes me feel good. Maybe some of those messages aren't going in one ear and out the other. Right. But, like I said, as far as role acceptance, you're challenging guys to be stars in their role. And the reality is, in the NBA, there's 2 or 3 guys that create advantages on that roster, and then the majority of the guys play off those advantages, which is what playing a role is all about. And most teams, they already got their guys that are going to create advantages, and they're looking for guys that help them by playing off advantages, being two-way players, competing at both ends. So I think our guys, if they got that mindset, they got the right one.
Is there an offense that you remember growing up watching that you said, well, that's exactly how it needs to be played? Because sometimes, without looking at players, it's just the way a system works. Maybe not championship level, but just the way it looks on the floor.
Yeah, for sure. I think as coaches, you always have an idea about ideally how you would like your teams to play. But with that said, I believe in putting guys in position. I'd rather have them doing what they're good at, obviously in a clearly defined role, than, doing something that they're not quite as good at, but it's, my particular system. So I believe in playing the guy's strengths. I mean, obviously, if I had to name a team, I think the 7 seconds or less, D'Antoni Suns. Mm-hmm. We've seen that kind of permeate the NBA the last few years, and I think they should get a lot of credit for being well ahead of their time.
Okay, so you heard it first here. So this is
7 seconds.
This is what Henry's going to run. Okay, so we got that right. So layups and threes, that's what we got, right?
Yeah, we got the scrimmage thing already from him. I mean, what else we need, really?
We got it, so.
Giving him an open book.
Yes.
No secrets.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious, going back to last year for a second here, your first year as a head coach. What were some of the things that surprised you? Were you ready for the amount of work that it takes not only to be a successful coach, but be able to figure out what buttons to push from each of these guys?
Yeah, it was, I felt like I was ready for it, and it's just one of those things you got to go through. I obviously, my time as assistant, I love it. I'm sure I'll be an assistant again, and I think your experience as a head coach, if I am an assistant again, I think it'll make me better, more understanding of what the head coach goes through on a daily basis. So it's been an unbelievable experience for me, and it's one that I've really enjoyed.
Coach, you were quoted in several places. It's been talked about on sports radio. Your thoughts on the G League and the 18-year-old contracts. Obviously, there's some college coaches like Coach Calipari is not happy about that. What were your thoughts when it first came across from the G League?
I think it's good. It's exciting. The professional game and the college game are in reality two different games. And, for the guys that are serious about being a pro, what better place to learn it? As I said, I think my answer about our system is I really believe in putting guys in position to succeed. I think that's a stark difference from the way most college programs, run their program. You're going there to play the way the coach wants, and they have a lot of success doing it that way. But I think learning the professional game in the G League, there's a ton of value in it. Learn how to be a pro, and like I said, they're just two different games, and I don't think there's a better place to learn it than here.
Yeah, in college you recruit for a system.
Right.
Now you're recruiting the best athlete you possibly can to see what they can do and develop into a big league talent.
For sure.
Yeah. Lastly, we wanted to ask you just about the G League and the growth of the league. We were talking earlier. Birmingham is going to have their own team from Erie, so Birmingham's going to have their team next year. What are your thoughts just on the league and how it's been able to grow? A lot of attention. We got play-by-play color for the Windy City Bulls and a number of places. What do you think of the growth of the league?
It's exciting. It's exciting to be a part of. From where it was 5 years ago to where it is now. Thinking about the possibilities here in the next season, following seasons. It's awesome, and obviously it's a reflection of how well the NBA as a whole is doing. And a global landscape, all that stuff. It's really a great time to, be a part of the NBA, be a part of the NBA G League, and it's exciting for all of us.
As always, we appreciate it, Coach. We'll be doing your commentary this year, so we're going to have a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Big thanks to Windy City Bulls head coach Charlie Henry for giving his time to the Windy City Hoops podcast. Next up on the pod, little roundtable discussion with myself, Jay Hood, Andy Masur, Julio Rausseo, and Chris Rouse. Guys, thanks for joining the pod today. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
So we can jump right into it. We're out here at the Sears Center, Windy City Bulls Media Day. Want to get your thoughts on the team. A lot of interesting personalities. They're in the G League. You guys at different levels of their career, traveling around the world, trying to follow their dreams of being in the league. So just wanted to ask everyone, what's your biggest takeaway from the guys you talked to today as far as how they represent the league?
It's going to be another exciting season. It's talking with John Octius and talking with Raleigh Elkins today. Both are defensive-minded players in a league that has seen, especially last year, an offensive explosion. God, I remember last year, Chris, there was games, one in particular was like 145 to 103. I mean, now you're starting to see that early on in the NBA.
Right.
But I'll be intrigued to see, and we talked to Charlie Henry as well, how defensive-minded the Bulls are this season. They don't want to trade shot buckets with anyone this year, so there's going to be maybe a second-half adjustment for the Bulls where they're going to be locking down teams. I'm really excited to see that.
Yeah, Coach Henry really made it known. Like, he doesn't want to trade buckets. He wants to play a lot more defense this season. He doesn't want to see those 140, 103 games that Julio just mentioned a few seconds ago. And then when you talk to the guys, they just seem like they're just ready to start the season. They say they have a lot of good chemistry. They're ready to get on the floor. They're ready to start playing. And they have a lot of offensive weapons, I think, with Tyler Ulis, who they got from Phoenix. He was on the Suns in the NBA, and then the Bulls sent him down when they signed him. So the Bulls, they have a lot of good talent that they can use to also score points, but also shut other teams down. And you have that in guys like Riley Alkins.
Mm-hmm. And the thing that impressed us the most as we were talking to some of these guys here today was the fact that they want to stand out. They're in the G League because they want to be in the NBA. But when you ask a guy to a man, they're saying, listen, we want to stand out, but we want to stand out in the realm of a team concept. We can be more noticed as a good teammate and a guy that fills a specific role on a team rather than being an individual who hoists up 40 shots.
Mm-hmm. I really like the diverse personalities of this ball club. Tyler Ulis has a lot on his shoulders as a Chicago guy, number one. But the other thing is that he really wants to be able to impress, because here's a guy here that came from a terrific program like Kentucky. The same thing with Michael Mulder coming from Kentucky. And they know what it's like to be able to play at a high level, but they really want to be able to achieve their dreams. And with Ulis in particular, he's got the tattoo of Chicago on his bicep and the White Sox as well. So he definitely, carries the weight of of Dwayne Wade or Derrick Rose or some of the others from here, and really wants to make a big impression.
Yeah, you can see that. I mean, as far as defensive-wise, talking about the Chicago Bulls are hitting that challenge this year. A lot of young players, guys, turning over the roster a little bit with them, and even more so you see that in the G League as far as turning over the roster and Coach Henry having to work that out and work with the new players he's got. What did you hear from him, and what do you guys views as far as kind of a college atmosphere, having to turn over a roster that much but still trying to bring them together early in the year?
Well, what I heard from Coach Henry is he's very happy to have some of these guys that are considered G League veterans, and guys like Farrakhan Hall, who's on his third season with the Bulls, John Octius in his third season with the Bulls. Yeah. And then you have guys like Mulder and Carrington Ward who were on the team last season. He said he wants those guys to sort of be like locker room leaders. They know how Charlie Henry does things in that locker room. He wants them to be the leaders of the young players that they brought down in Ulis and Alkins and other guys that they are in their first year. Kaiser Gates is another first-year player. Right. So he just wants them to be locker room leaders, and he likes that diversity on that team.
And it helps that both Windy City and Chicago run the same type of system, and that can be said league-wide. Everyone runs identical systems that match their parent club. So if it's Antonio Blakeney like last year, who was up and down, or bringing in a player like Cristiano Felicio to play for a game, the coaches and the players know the system well, so it makes that adjustment pretty smooth.
Yeah, and the coaching staff, they're obviously in communication with the big team's coaching staff. And Coach Henry was telling us that sometimes they'll try something down here to see if it's going to work, for the Chicago Bulls. They'll try it down here to see if a guy is capable of running a certain system or a certain set. It obviously doesn't translate to the level of play here, because you've got guys like Lauri Markkanen up with the Bulls, but it's kind of an interesting dynamic where you can kind of experiment, but yet you're still kind of under control.
Yeah, Andy, that was something that was an eye-opener for me. We made the parallel with Coach Henry. We asked him, from a G League standpoint, is it like Major League Baseball, where there are certain teams, not all teams in baseball are like this, where the minor league system must kind of mirror what the Major League team does. But in this case, he gave us he gave us 80-20 pretty much, is that whatever you see on the floor, you're going to see Fred Hoiberg kind of run, and also, as you mentioned, they'll be able to experiment on some things too. So this is a great opportunity for Coach Henry, not only for him to kind of show his wares as a head coach and some things he could show, but also be able to say, here's the Bulls system. Once you get called up, you'll be well acclimated to it.
Right. Yeah, we've seen that with Blakeney. You give the example, Blakeney and Archie Diacono were up and down last year, Chicago and Windy City, and now they're getting significant minutes as the Chicago Bulls are seeing some injuries this year. So obviously it's some new players trying to hopefully get that same thing, that up and down, and get that experience on both sides. And Jonathan, you talk about baseball. It seems like the NBA is trying to implement the G League a lot more as a feeder system, more and more year after year. We got the new big development happening with this new professional path they're opening up. Big-time elite high school players can jump right into the G League and be developed that way instead of choosing to go to college. And some people say they get paid a little bit in college too, but there's a little bit of money, more money coming their way directly through this new professional path program. So what are you guys' thoughts on that, on what this can mean for the G League's future? And if you were a player, what do you think your choice would be as far as going to a big-time college program or looking into this new professional path for the G League?
I think it depends on the player and the player situation. When Chris and I talk to a Tyler Eulis or a Michael Mulder, and we bring up their days in Lexington, their eyes lit up, and they think back to the fondness of memories they had in Division I. And there's other players who are blue chips that may just want to jump in right away and become a professional. G League travel, if you want to be a professional, you'll learn rather quickly if this is going to suit you. If you're an 18-year-old doing a commercial flight from Chicago to Edinburgh, Texas to play Rio Grande Valley, for example, you'll learn right away the rigors of the road. And I think it's going to be a blessing for the G League. It could be a good opportunity for some players who don't want to go to college but don't want to go to Europe or play in Belarus for a year. They could stay here in the States.
See, to me, the college travel and the G League travel is the same. Like, I could go to that same Chick-fil-A in college. I can get into G League.
Yeah.
It's the
same budget, basically.
That same Red Robin.
That's right.
Yum.
I mean, listen. I was in Troy, Alabama last year with the UIC Flames. Right. That's no different than going to some other college town that has the same type of food, like the same Taco Bell, same McDonald's, same what's the difference?
Chain row, one of those kind of things.
Right. Exactly.
I think if it's me, I'd be really honored at 5'0" to get a scholarship somewhere. But I think I might want to go the college route, because there is something to be said for the way that those guys reacted to, when you bring up Kentucky, when you bring up Purdue, when you bring up Arizona. There's just something about it. Even if you're going to be there for 1 year and you're only going to be there for 1 year, stinks for the program. Right. But I think that it's kind of cool to have that affiliation with a school.
You know what? When you think about it, I think Julio was right. I think it depends on the player. What I think it comes down to, I think it depends on if you're a fan of college basketball. Because some kids, they look at those college basketball players like, that's a cool atmosphere. I want to go play in that atmosphere. Meanwhile, in the G League, you get paid. So I think it really just depends. Like Julio said, it depends on the player. It depends on if you love college basketball enough to take a year and go play college basketball, or do you just want to get paid immediately?
Well, as you said, it all depends on the program.
Right.
How much you get paid for the program.
Right.
Is it a pay cut or not?
And I get the move by the NBA and the G League to implement this. I know in Australia, the National Basketball League, they were trying to entice some of these blue chip prospects to go all the way to Australia for a year and play. Well, why not stay here and get paid $250,000 if you're a blue chip? I wish I was considered a blue chip prospect.
You are in the broadcasting.
I appreciate that, Jonathan.
Absolutely.
Thank
no
you,
question about that.
Thank
You
you,
do here, Julio. Absolutely.
Checks in the mail.
So that's
just
things that we
cleared,
looked at. I mean, you hear a lot of horror stories about going overseas and not getting paid. These companies they're working for that are owning these teams, they're not getting checks. So it's a little more stable in the U.S. as far as a G League system, so it might be more attractive. But do you see the elite, the tops, the Zion Williamsons, that level of player looking at the G League, or do you think that college atmosphere is what they're going to be going for? That Duke, that Krzyzewski elite coach?
Yeah, I think it really just depends on who the player is. If you want to be in that campus environment and you're getting recruited by Duke, Kentucky, I think you take that opportunity. If you're getting, no offense to a school, say like a Stetson or someplace other small, if you're a pretty good product but you're not getting recruited heavily, right, might as well take the dive in the professional ranks.
And he was talking about the college program, not the cologne. I know you're thinking
Stetson. That's for men, right?
The brand that fits.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I got the high karate.
High karate. Jakar, whatever that was before. I think going back to that question about would they go to the college rank or would they go to the G League? I mean, listen, the G League is really starting to do some great things with getting more noticed, and everything on Facebook, right. And now select games here in Chicago are going to be on NBC Sports Chicago, which is a great thing. College exposure is so much better right now just because it's an established entity. Mm-hmm. You've got CBS, you've got NBC, you've got ABC, you've got ESPN. A lot more chance to get noticed, I would think. But again, I think it just boils down to, and I hate to be repetitive, but it does boils down to the player.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a few issues that I have with it. Is that define elite in high school players, because there could be some guys that are not heavily recruited and he could end up being an elite player. So, like, how do you define elite? I know we have the star system and the ESPN rankings to go off of, but how do you define elite? And also, when you're talking about a high school player going to the G League, you're also sort of underdeveloped. You haven't really gone against professional level players yet. So maybe it is a good idea, but you may have to make sure as a player you are absolutely ready. Like, everybody's not going to be LeBron James, like just a straight superstar out of high school. So you have to make sure you're absolutely ready if you make this choice and come to the G League.
Yeah, and that's something you got to look at. That's what the NBA did as far as guys jumping direct from high school. They went away from that. They wanted a little more development as far as having that professional readiness and that maturity. I think they're looking for that a little bit more from college players. So it's interesting how this will all play out. Could mean big things for the G League. More attention, more eyeballs if you've got elite talent coming straight in. Could be big changes in the future. But we can kind of wrap up the roundtable here, guys. What are your thoughts looking forward to this season? What are you looking for? What are you excited for the most for the Windy City Bowl season?
I'm excited to see Tyler Ulis. Last 2 seasons, there's been a Windy City Bulls player that has played extended minutes in the NBA. Spencer Dinwiddie 2 years ago. Now he's a guaranteed made man with the Brooklyn Nets. There's so many guys. Last year was Antonio Blakeney, the way he performed as a Rookie of the Year, now has a guaranteed deal. Who's that breakout player this year? I'm excited to find out. We could tell early on. It could be a Tyler Ulis. It could be a Raleigh Atkins. It's going to be exciting to find out who's going to be that next guy that heads to the NBA. That's always fun to see.
Absolutely.
I'm interested in seeing the mix of talent because it's very rare in the G League you have a mix of, I guess you could say, veterans and then a mix of young guys. I'm actually interested in seeing how those guys mesh together as the season goes along. And I'm also interested in seeing this style of basketball that Charlie Henry is trying to coach this season. He wants to be able to score. He wants guys to play within themselves, but he also wants to play some defense. He wants to lock teams down. So I'm interested in seeing that this year.
Yeah, that's part of my excitement too, because in talking to Coach Henry, it's not often that you get to see a guy coach a second year in this league, because they're generally back with their big club or whatever. So the team must see something in him to want to develop him. And he was talking about this being a better experience for him. Now when he goes back to being an assistant, he's going to be a better assistant, having an idea of what to expect here on a daily basis, and having to adjust on the fly when you lose a player to the NBA, which is what his job is, to get these guys ready. I'll be interested to see how he does coach this year and what kind of things he learned from last year, the things maybe not to do and some of the things that he maybe wants to do now.
Yeah. It's my first year.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. It's my first year. I've watched plenty of G League basketball on television, so I know exactly what to expect. I watched the Windy City Bulls last year on television, so this is my first year, and I'll be able to. Usually, it's on the big screen in the Hood Cave, but here, I get right here at courtside, be able to call the action, and really, guys, it's really like it's like American Idol. That's exactly what we're doing right here. It's like watching reality in front of us and seeing who's going to be able to get that call, the next step. Now, again, we have to determine who's who out of the four of us as far as the panel on American Idol. But I mean, be honest to goodness, man, that's exactly what it is. I mean, we're trying to see the stars of tomorrow get a chance to live their dream. We talked to a couple of players. C.J. Fair talked about that out of Syracuse, saying that he's just trying to live his dream. And that's exactly where we are. This is a reality show. Right. We're going to find out who's going to be able to be good enough to get that call up.
And on any single night, even if you're not a two-way player, you're going to have eyeballs watching you. You're going to have an NBA scout watch a Michael Mulder, a David Lowery. They're going to watch these guys. It may not be with the Windy City Bulls. They could get like Spencer Dinwiddie 2 years ago. He wasn't a two-way guy with the Bulls, but he's with the Brooklyn Nets now in his second full season. So it's going to be fun to see who really rises to the occasion throughout the season.
It will indeed be interesting to see who rises to the occasion for the 2018-2019 Windy City Bulls season. Don't miss any of the action at the Sears Center in Hoffman Estates. Things tip off this Friday night, November 2nd, against the Lakeland Magic. I want to thank my guests today on the Windy City Hoops podcast, Jonathan Hood, Andy Masur, Chris Rouse, and Julio Rausseo. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time on the Windy City Hoops podcast.